Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Our program will begin in just a moment. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Our program will begin in just a moment. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Our program will begin in just a moment. Good day. Welcome to Advocacy Anywhere, powered by AJC. Advocacy Anywhere is AJC's new digital platform that will enable you to engage with AJC's global expertise, content, and advocacy from wherever you are. Today's program is brought to you in partnership with Jewish Insider. You can sign up for Jewish Insider's daily kickoff by visiting www.jewishinsider.com. Today, we will be discussing anti-Semitism in the UK's Labour Party. We are delighted to be joined by Lord John Mann, who serves as independent advisor to the UK government on anti-Semitism, Joan Ryan, Honorary President of Labour Friends of Israel and a former Labour MP, and Ian Austin, Chair of Mainstream, the Campaign Against Extremism, also a former Labour MP. Our conversation will be moderated by Simone Rodan-Benzaquen, Director of AJC Europe. After we hear from our guests, we'll take your questions. You may email your questions to questions plural at ajc.org, or use the Q&A feature in Zoom. Simone, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ali. Hello to everyone who has joined us from around the world. As great friends of the United Kingdom, many of us have been watching the increase of anti-Semitism there with great concern. 2018 was a record year of anti-Semitic hate crimes, and 2019 probably one of the most worrisome for the Jewish community and certainly all those who care about anti-Semitism and racism. Indeed, the British general election was a great source of worry for many. One of the major political parties in the United Kingdom, the British Labour Party, that of previously Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, Ed Miliband, and many and those here on the panel today, had witnessed for the first time in its history an explosion of anti-Semitism that has been qualified by some as institutional anti-Semitism within the party. As a consequence, many left the party, and just a couple of numbers, just as a reminder, that should help illustrate the fear in particular among the Jewish community. 87% of British Jews believed before the general election that Jeremy Corbyn is anti-Semitic, and 47% of Jews considered leaving Britain if Jeremy Corbyn was to become Prime Minister. Now, as you know, a few things have happened since then. Boris Johnson was elected Prime Minister, Britain went into lockdown on March 23rd, and on April 4th, Keir Starmer was elected Britain's Labour's party the leader. Now, to speak about all of this and more, I couldn't be more honoured to be hosting Joan Ryan, Lord Mann, and Ian Austin today. The three of them are what can only be qualified as true mention. During turbulent times, Joan, Ian, and John have been what has unfortunately become rare in politics these days. Incredibly principled, courageous moral leaders in their fight for what they believed is right. So once again, it's a privilege to have you here with us today.
Thank you.
So maybe to start out, John, as I just mentioned, the UK is in lockdown due to the coronavirus pandemic. More than 11,000 people have died. The Prime Minister was just recently released from hospital after having been sick with coronavirus. Yesterday we heard the news that Rabbi Pinter passed away, raising the number within the Jewish community to 215 deceased known. The two main Jewish newspapers, the Jewish Chronicle and the Jewish News, had to declare bankruptcy due to the resulting economic situation. So if I may just ask you simply, how are you feeling, and give us a little bit of perspective sort of on what's on the ground, what's your state of mind, and maybe also sort of a little bit more precisely, how do you think the situation specifically with coronavirus will affect the Jewish community on the ground?
Well, the impact is huge, of course, in this country, like everywhere else, and the Jewish community seems to have been hit slightly earlier, a week or so, than other parts of the country. And so we're seeing these terrible tragedies reveal themselves, and it means we have to change our organisation, different forms of communication, and I think we're learning very, very quickly from that. And I think we are probably learning much faster than those who have caused us problems over the last few years, who have been noticeable by their failure to organise and by their unwillingness really to speak out. There's a big change of mood, and I think because we won the big battle in the election in December, where the leading anti-Semites, Galloway and Williamson, were humiliated and entirely rejected by the British voters, we feel in a far stronger position, and there is a confidence back there. So when we come through the crisis of coronavirus, we'll be a lot stronger.
Thank you very much, John. I hope that your message of hope is indeed very true. Ian, maybe if I can pass on to you. I know you've been under the weather. I hope you're feeling all right now.
Yeah.
Please know how much we appreciate that you're with us today. Maybe if we can walk a little bit back. You, I think, very courageously stepped down from the Labour Party, really, after being a member for 35 years. In what I think was really sort of the hope to prevent Jeremy Corbyn victory. Could you sort of maybe walk us through and what sort of prompted you to make that decision? I think it's important for our listeners to hear this. And then maybe going towards the future, in his acceptance speech, Keir Starmer, the new leader of the Labour Party, eliminate the anti-Semitism in the party, calling it, quote, a stain. What do you make out of this? And do you think there is hope in the new leadership?
Well, thanks, Simone, and thank you for inviting me to take part in this. And thanks to everybody who's joined us as well, particularly, as you say, whilst we're all facing this, this coronavirus in all of our, in the US, with you in France and here in the UK as well. I think the moment I realised I had to leave the Labour Party was pretty much 2 years ago, when Joan and I were in Poland on a March of the Living trip, and we were preparing to visit Auschwitz. And I was introduced to a man called Ivor Pearl, who's in his 90s. He was an Auschwitz survivor. And they introduced me. They said, "Dear Ivor, this is Ian Austin. He's a member of Parliament." And he looked up at me and he said, "Which party?" And when I said Labour, he said, "Are you not ashamed to be in the Labour Party with all the anti-Semitism?" I'll never forget it. It was a deeply shocking moment. And look, I've been campaigning against Corbyn since 2015. I've been warning about his previous associations, his extremism, his support for, how he'd supported and defended all sorts of extremists and in some cases anti-Semites and terrorists, but also knew that it wasn't enough. And so a little over a year ago, Joan left the Labour Party, I left the Labour Party. I didn't leave because I wanted to join another party. I left because I wanted to shine a spotlight on the disgrace it had become under Jeremy Corbyn, and because I wanted to encourage other people to step up and do everything they could to get rid of him. But it became clear to me that as we approached the election, Jeremy Corbyn was still the leader. The country faced a stark choice. People were, you know, they can say now, oh, well, look, there was no chance of him winning. But in early November last year, when the campaign started, it was by no means clear that Boris Johnson would get an overall majority. And I felt that if he didn't get an overall majority, Corbyn would become the Prime Minister because he would have the support of the minor parties. And I felt that that was too big a risk for our country. I'm not a conservative. I disagree with lots of things Boris Johnson and the Conservatives have said and done over the years, of course. But in the end, I felt that Jeremy Corbyn was utterly unfit to lead our country. Now, we could have, you know, people like Joan and me, we could have kept our heads down. We could have ignored it all, you know, left it to other people to deal with this. But I think in politics, you know, you've got to step up. You can't expect the public to answer a question that you're not prepared to answer yourselves. You have to take responsibility and you have to show some courage and some leadership. And so that's why I took, you know, for me, it was a heartbreaking decision. After 35 years in the Labour Party, to say vote for Boris Johnson was a really difficult thing to do. But I think it was the right thing to do because I wanted to make sure that the Labour Party were beaten so badly that they would come to their senses and try and move beyond this. And I think we're beginning to see some signs of that. The latter part of your question was about Keir Starmer. Now, look, you know, I think Keir Starmer's election is necessary, but not sufficient to sorting out the problems in the Labour Party. I don't think extremism will just disappear with Jeremy Corbyn. I think people think, you know, he disappears and you can draw a line under the last 5 years and it's all gone away, but I don't think that's true. Keir Starmer is obviously an improvement on Jeremy Corbyn, but let's be honest, you know, that's not a very high bar. Pretty much anybody would have been an improvement on Jeremy Corbyn. Keir Starmer's clearly not an anti-Semite. And it's good, as you say, that he started off with an apology to the Jewish community. That's good, of course. And it's good as well that he met the Jewish community online last week. But he's going to be judged on his actions, not on his words. And let's be honest about this, you know, he was criticised for not speaking out more strongly against Jeremy Corbyn over the last 4 or 5 years. He praised, when he launched his campaign, he praised what he called Jeremy Corbyn's radicalism. Last year, he said he backed him 100%. Just a few months ago, he was campaigning to make him Prime Minister. And he's appointed as some of his official front bench spokespeople, part of his senior team in Parliament. He's appointed a couple of people I think have got, you know, well, who've been accused of things which were anti-Semitic. And he's appointed as a shadow foreign secretary someone who has supported the right of return, who has supported arms embargoes, although she qualifies that by saying embargo on arms deals which violate human rights. But nevertheless, you know, the idea that the Labour Party is suddenly transformed overnight, restored to a sort of mainstream, reasonable organisation, I think is wishful thinking. The extremists who joined the Labour Party have not gone away with Jeremy Corbyn. The staff, a lot of them are from the hard left now. Keir Starmer's going to have to face down hard left leaderships in some of the trade unions. The National Executive Committee, which runs the party, the composition of that has changed a little, but it's by no means clear that he's going to have, you know, their full support. I think the hard left are not going to let go of the grip they've got on the Labour Party willingly and easily. So it's going to require tough, firm, resolute action to restore the Labour Party as a sort of mainstream, reasonable organisation in British politics.
Thank you very much, Ian. I think that was very helpful. Actually, Joan, if I might, first of all, you have also left the party for, if I believe, the same reasons that Ian so compellingly described. Ian just said the new leader has to be judged by his actions. What do you expect when of the new leader of the Labour Party, and how do you see the future? And if maybe also sort of could ask a very specific question. A couple of days ago, an internal report was leaked documenting deficiencies in how the Labour Party dealt with complaints. And now apparently an inquiry has been launched by Keir Starmer. Could you talk to us a little bit about the significance also of this report, and if that report specifically means anything for the future, and how, and again, on how Keir Starmer will be judged on his capacity to deal with this issue of anti-Semitism?
Yeah, hi Simone, and hello to all your listeners, and to my former colleagues and friends Ian and John, and thanks for asking me to be part of this. I couldn't disagree with anything really that Ian said, so I won't rehearse the week in which we both left the Labour Party. I think Ian's covered that really well. But I would just say it was a very tough thing to do, to walk away from your parliamentary career, from your seat, from the people you represent. Those are not easy things to do. And I think the biggest disappointment, and I think I can speak for Ian as well here, for both of us, was that so few people showed the moral courage that was needed and stepped up. And there are those now who I don't disagree with, who are saying now is a time to put your shoulder to the wheel and work with Keir to sort out the Labour Party. And I agree with that. But I just wish they put the shoulder to that wheel a couple of years ago. We've had 5 long years of this disaster of anti-Semitism in our party. And it doesn't stop with the party. Anti-Semitism is a poison. And when it spreads throughout one of the 2 major political parties in your democracy, then it spreads further. And like you say about what we see online about the coronavirus, the anti-Semitism around where that's come from, why is it happening, well, that's part of that poison. And if it's there within one of your major democratic bodies, your official opposition, then I think you can expect that it spreads far and wide. So I think it was really necessary that 2-3 years ago, people needed to be resigning in large numbers. We could have formed a centre-left party that actually could have made a difference, or we could have been independents like Ian was, and of such large numbers that it could have removed Jeremy Corbyn. That is not anything that was impossible. That didn't happen. Yes, we have a new leader. I think Keir Starmer is a good man. I think he's a good man. I think he's made a good start from the moment he was announced as leader. I'm a bit concerned about things in the past, but we need to, as you say, look forward. And it is a step forward. There's no question it's a step forward. He was absolutely right to make a full and sincere apology to the Jewish community. He's absolutely right that only when members of the Jewish community feel they can return to Labour could you say that he has been successful in tackling this. But it's not something that starts and then ends. I think Ian is right that the election of Keir Starmer, although we want to be hopeful, and it is a step forward, it doesn't mean that anti-Semitism has been dealt with. And the report you're referring to, I think, is the very evidence of that. Because those people who were around Jeremy Corbyn, all the placemen.
Could you maybe
and women,
explain a little bit what happened with the report?
Well, this is a report apparently based on some 10,000 emails exchanged within the Labour Party, mostly within the headquarters and within the regional offices, between members of staff, that hard left news commentators, Navaris and others, who are kind of like outriders for Jeremy Corbyn and those kind of politics, have put together or have leaked it having been put together by some senior members of Jeremy Corbyn's team in the Labour Party, trying to demonstrate that there was this conspiracy theory, this attempt to stab Jeremy Corbyn in the back to make sure he didn't win an election, that the party staff were working against him, that there was no mishandling of complaints in particular, but that all complaints were not handled well, but it wasn't anti-Semitism. Well, I'm afraid that really is not the case. We know that institutional anti-Semitism is the way the whole system operates. And we know from evidence from party staff who we've been able to trust over many years that there was clearly anti-Semitic intent in the way complaints about anti-Semitism were dealt with. There's no question in my mind that that's the case. So this is an attempt to say that there was a plot from within to stop Jeremy Corbyn getting elected, and it was because of his either left-wing politics or because there were these kind of right-wingers who wanted to undermine him. I mean, and this is classic kind of hard left politics, really. They're never going to accept that the Labour Party and the British public finally want to reject their kind of politics. One thing that does worry me about all of this is, yes, this is a challenge now to Keir Starmer to prevent him getting off to a better start. He doesn't want a civil war in the Labour Party at the beginning of his leadership. But frankly, I think he needs to take some very tough measures, because he'll never be as powerful as he is right now, right at the beginning.
What can those measures be?
I personally think an organisation like Momentum, which is not a caucus, it is possible to have a caucus within the Labour Party, a policy-based caucus, like you have in American politics. Momentum is a cult. And I think it's entryism, and I think it should be prescribed the way militant was prescribed in the by Neil Kinnock in the 1980s, early 90s. I don't think there's any place in the Labour Party. What Momentum has enabled is mass entryism by hard left extremists that have destroyed the base of the Labour Party, that has now to be rebuilt. And I think on that basis, they shouldn't be there. And I think all the time that Jeremy Corbyn has been a Labour MP, and others like him, John McDonnell, because Jeremy Corbyn's not on his own, the fact that he's not leader doesn't mean this ends. All that time, we were tolerating as a Labour Party the intolerant, because their politics are absolutely hard left, extremist, intolerant. We judge it by their actions and by their friends, shall they be known. And we shouldn't have been tolerating it. And I know it's going to be very tough for Keir. And yes, I want to roll my sleeves up and help him get the party to where it should be. But he is going to have to face these tough decisions, because unity, yes, unity is wonderful, but it's based on shared values and principles and common policy direction. You might disagree about, different bits of a policy or different ways to implement a policy, but I doubt you'd find that John, Ian and I disagreed on the fundamental values and principles of what the Labour Party should be. But I'd be very surprised if Jeremy Corbyn was sat here if he agreed on the same values and principles or the same policies or the same way of achieving them. So I think really we've got to, you know, it's fine being a broad church. And somebody else said, it wasn't me, but that even a broad church has walls. And we need to find those walls in the Labour Party and work out who should be on the other side of them. Because there's many, many members of the party at the moment who are not going to let go, are going to fight back, will be happy to create a civil war in the Labour Party rather than relinquish control. And this is appalling. And the final thing I'd say is, the other thing I'm very worried about is one of the lessons I think we've learned from this. Certainly I would say, I don't think you can fight anti-Semitism unless you fight anti-Zionism. And one thing that's worried me throughout all of this is how few voices were willing to stand up for the right of Israel to exist. Not to defend a particular government or party in Israel, but its very right to exist and to defend itself. Not willing to speak out against the boycott, divestment and sanctions movement. Not willing to stand up to Corbyn when every amendment he wanted to bring to the definition of anti-Semitism was all about being able to say that the existence of Israel was a racist endeavour. So if we just now focus on this notion of anti-Semitism without recognising that the new way into that was through anti-Zionist anti-Semitism, which is so much more difficult for the Labour Party to take on because of the hard left's obsession with being anti-West and anti-Israel. If we don't take that on, then we will never really tackle this problem within the Labour Party.
Here, completely right.
Yeah, as they say. Thank you very much, Joan. I want to just give the opportunity to John to quickly react to that and maybe just add one tiny little question before we go to the question from the audience, is as the advisor to the government of anti-Semitism, and of course having been through all of this yourself and now listening to Ian and Joan, whom you know so well, and what is it for you as the advisor to the government, what are your key objectives going forward?
Well, the key objective is that the Jewish community feels totally confident and safe living in the United Kingdom, and in particular that young Jewish people, you know, those aged 16 to 21, that they are...
John, if you can you try and come a little bit closer and speak a little up? I think we have a sound issue. Thank you.
I'll speak louder. The aim is that every young Jewish person, every Jewish teenager in the United Kingdom has the ability, if they wish, to live in the country with no impediment on any of their freedoms, their values, their views from anyone at any time. That's what I've said to government. I've given a 5-year time scale for that to be achieved. And the Labour Party is just one part of the problem. The people who came into the Labour Party, the racists, I think most of them will leave the Labour Party. But that doesn't mean the problem goes away, because what they're liable to do is to coalesce around one issue, and that issue will be, they'll describe it as Palestine. And so in fact they'll spend more time being anti-Semitic, not less, and they're more connected together than they were 4 or 5 years ago. And they're more internationally connected, including into places like the United States. So we will need to be tackling not just what happens inside the Labour Party, but where those people go and what they do outside the Labour Party. And a key part of that, therefore, is going to be how we deal with the internet, how we deal with these websites that spew out the propaganda, and we have to have a strategy and laws and an approach this year to dealing with that, and that is the biggest priority. And ironically, the coronavirus crisis doesn't hinder us in drawing up ways of dealing with that, because the internet is where everyone is at the moment. So that is vital, and that linkage, particularly into extremists on the left in the United States, is one that between us we should pay a lot more attention to. I don't think we've given that sufficient priority, and I think we should this year.
Agree, absolutely.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the three of you. Whenever I have to say, whenever I hear you speak, and I've heard you speak numerous times, whether it's at Global Forum or in London, I'm always incredibly impressed. And as I mentioned from in the beginning, you are true mention. Ali, I would like to ask you now to go to questions.
Thank you so much, everyone. Just a reminder that if you want to submit a question for our guests, you can email questions, that's questions plural, at ajc.org, or you can use the Q&A feature in Zoom. Our first question comes from Sheila from San Francisco, and Sheila says, the Tories made significant gains in traditional labor strongholds this past election. In many of those places, there are few, if any, Jews. Did anti-Semitism play a role in Labour's loss in those places? Ian, let's go to you.
I think it definitely did. I live in an area in Dudley in the West Midlands near Birmingham, where there is, in my district, no Jewish community at all. I mean, I used to say that I got 100% of the Jewish vote, but it was only 5 people, and one of them was my dad. And that, by the way, that's not really an exaggeration. So people in Dudley, you know, they didn't know the detail, the theory, the history of anti-Semitism. But I used to get stopped in the street or in a restaurant or a cafe, wherever it might be, at church events, where people would talk to me about this. They didn't know the detail of it, but they knew that something had gone wrong in the Labour Party. They didn't like extremism and they didn't like racism. And this was, look, it might not have been the top issue. You know, there was Brexit, also other Corbyn's personal unsuitability and incompetence. But it was definitely one of the issues in the election, definitely. And I think it's a great thing about our country, something we should be really proud of, that ordinary, decent British people stood up and came together and defeated racism at this election. And I wanted, you know, at the beginning of the election, I wanted the British people to stand up for the Jewish community in the UK. And I think it's a fantastic thing about our country that that's what people did. Really good thing.
And don't you agree, Ian, that so many MPs came back and spoke about the most toxic thing on the doorstep was not Brexit all the time, as Jeremy Corbyn and his team wanted to say, but was actually Jeremy Corbyn himself. Now, even if they didn't mention anti-Semitism, they knew something smelt wrong about the party. And I think what we did was draw back the curtain and let people see what kind of a man he was and what kind of politics he represented. And even if people voting didn't say, I am specifically rejecting anti-Semitism, I think in communicating what he was like and demonstrating it, which he did himself through his anti-Semitism, I think the British people, to their credit, saw this man's not fit to run the Labour Party, he's certainly not fit to be Prime Minister.
I think if I could just, Ali, just make one other point on this, just following on from what Joan said. Joan's completely right on this. I think the really important thing to understand about what's happened to the Labour Party is the way the culture of the party has been changed over the last 5 years. So lots of people who were previously in fringe organisations have joined the Labour Party to support Jeremy Corbyn. Some of them will leave, as John says. I'm not convinced that all of them will. But what's also happened is that the whole mood inside the party has changed dramatically. So people who 10 years ago would have been campaigning about homelessness or welfare benefits or whatever it might be, people who have never met a Jewish person in their lives, who before Jeremy Corbyn's leadership never found Israel on the map, are all of a sudden obsessed with Israel. It's become their number one foreign policy concern. When the Labour Party conference debated Palestine a couple of years ago, it was unbelievably, almost every speaker from a supposedly pro-Palestinian perspective, the conference hall was awash with Palestinian flags.
And would anybody have dared to hold up an Israeli flag at that moment in time and felt safe?
And the other thing, just on this, Simone, is that my organisation, Mainstream, conducted a poll just a month or so ago, which showed that only 18% of Labour Party members, this was a poll of Labour Party members, not supporters, but members, only 18% think the Labour Party has a serious problem with anti-Semitism. And almost 80%, almost 4 out of 5 Labour Party members think there was either no problem at all or that it had been exaggerated. And I think that shows how the culture of the Labour Party has been poisoned under Jeremy Corbyn. And I think this is really the most distressing thing about what's happened over the last 5 years. Particularly young people, people who think, you know, Jeremy Corbyn, oh, he's a nice guy, he's been for peace, he's campaigned on all these social issues. What they say about him, it can't be true. And it must be a smear and a plot. And really, they've been dragged into holding unacceptable views. And I think that's the worst thing about what's happened over the last 5 years, is the poisoning of young people, of young people's minds, and the way they've been introduced, lots of them have been introduced to politics and the views that they've been left with. And I really think that shows the work that's got to be done to sort this problem out. And it's not good enough, as Joan also said earlier, just to say we want to be united. I don't want to be united with people who are wrong. I think it's much more important to be in the right position, and that's the basis on which you build unity.
Great, thank you so much. Our next question comes from Ilana Ron-Levy of Washington, D.C. And Ilana wants to know, how representative do the three of you think you are of the current Labour Party, or for those who have left the Labour Party, of British people in general? Joan, you mentioned that you wish that there were more people like you. What percentage of your colleagues are sympathetic towards Israel and the rights of Jews to live full lives unencumbered in the United Kingdom?
Well, I think the election result shows that we're pretty representative of the British people.
I think so.
The Labour Party.
Yeah, I think the British people. I think basically British people are a decent people. And when you explain to them that anti-Semitism is racism against a small group of people, against Jewish people in the United Kingdom, they're horrified and they reject it. So I think our views are mainstream, which is why I guess Ian's organisation, of which I'm a part as well, is called Mainstream. In the Labour Party, I think one of the most worrying things in the Labour Party, and something that will have to be tackled to get the change that I think all three of us want to see, is the fact that people don't, a lot of members in the party don't recognise that when their views are anti-Semitic, and don't recognise that Jeremy Corbyn's actions and views were often anti-Semitic. And of course he would deny it. So they would then be confused. Were they or weren't they? is it okay to lay a wreath on the terrorists who murdered the Israeli Olympians at Munich? Is that anti-Semitic or not? Is it anti-Semitic to say that Israel is a racist endeavour or not? Is it all the effort around the issue of Palestinians, and I think all three of us are absolutely committed to a two-party, a two-state solution. Not one of the actions of the hard left and what went on at our conference 2 years ago, and all the Palestinian flags, not one of those actions has helped one single Palestinian one iota. It does nothing to assist the situation. It does nothing to build conflict resolution values. It does nothing to develop coexistence and bring people together. It just simply drives people apart. So my worry is that there are a lot of people in the Labour Party who know that these things are very wrong and they want to reject them. And I think many of them will stand up now and do so. They will want to stand up because I think in campaigning to put Jeremy Corbyn into number 10, they felt and were morally compromised by their own actions in supporting him. So now, we have to move forward. Now is their opportunity to redeem themselves somewhat by standing up and being willing to acknowledge that within the Labour Party, this culture and these kind of policies in relation to the Middle East, they must be questioned and there must be change, and it needs to be deep and fundamental. So when Keir says he will tear out anti-Semitism by its roots, that is what it will take, but he needs to have a proper analysis of what those roots are and how we're going to get them out. So I think the Labour Party is a mixed bag at the moment. I think there are many who are appalled at what's happened to the Labour Party over the last 5 years and do now want to put their shoulder to the wheel and get change. But there are also those who are not going to do that, and there are those who are going to actively resist that.
Thanks so much. Our next question is for John, and it's several people have sent in the same question, so I'm going to summarize what they've asked. A lot of what we're hearing is that anti-Semitism has really been politicized. It's become part of the political landscape. How do we depoliticize anti-Semitism in this moment?
Well, I think we have to be celebrating the fact that the two leaders of the movement against the Jewish community stood in the British election, George Galloway and Chris Williamson. They're the two leaders, the two leading proponents of all the hostility, all the growth of anti-Semitism, the two most public figures. And they both got 2%. 2%. That's all. Which is, even joke comic candidates would normally get more than 2%. And so the British people have spoken, and I'm very upbeat about that. In the same way that the Jeremy Corbyn candidate to be the deputy leader in the Labour Party got 17%, 17, a few weeks ago. And the expectation would have been a year ago that it got 60, 70% of the vote. And so there has been a huge change and shift because the British people have rejected anti-Semitism. And so the politicisation that comes is those extremists trying to drag the Jewish community into any argument, any issue, using novel techniques as well as old techniques for doing so. Exactly as we're seeing with attempts to blame the Jewish community the coronavirus crisis. And what we should be confident that we will always win the vast majority of the people for decency and respect of the Jewish community, confident in the Jewish community's ability to defend itself and organise itself. And we should also be increasingly happy about the huge growth in the number of young Jewish activists brave enough to speak out. And that is one of the things, the direct consequence of Corbynism, young Jewish voices fighting.
Thank you so much. And our last question comes from AJC CEO David Harris, who's on the line. David says, thank you, dear friends, for being with AJC today and for what you stand for. David's question is, how do we reconcile the new leader's resolve to root out anti-Semitism with some of his appointments to the shadow cabinet? Does he believe he can control those individuals, or is he perhaps trying to please all sides of the party at once in the same time? Ian, let's start with you.
Well, thanks, David, and thank you for your kind words, as always, and thanks for everything you and your colleagues do at AJC. And I think it's really important to recognise the importance of your work. You know, not just, I think most of the listeners today are from the US, and they'll know about the brilliant work that AJC does in the US, but it's really important as well that they understand the fantastic work that you do in Europe and in the UK, and the great support that you've given to people like me and Joan over the years, and the encouragement that you've given us, and the great strength that we've drawn from that. So thanks for everything that you've done to support us. Look, I think it's probably the latter. You know, I think he's striving for unity. He's got rid of, you know, a lot of Corbyn supporters, but I think some of the appointments he has made are pretty questionable. And I mean, look, I think the Labour Party was in a pretty bad place when it came to Israel, even before Jeremy Corbyn. It had adopted a policy of unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state without a peace process and with no sort of negotiation, which I think is actually a barrier to peace. It had adopted, it took a pretty one-sided position during the Gaza conflict in 2014. So it's gonna take a lot of work to get the Labour Party back into a reasonable position when it comes to Israel and the Middle East. Look, in the end, he's going to be judged by his actions. And my organisation, Mainstream, has set some pretty clear tests as to what we want to see them do. So we want to see them kick out all the racists. We want to see them. He says he's going to develop a new policy, a new procedure for cases of anti-Semitism, which he's going to develop with the Jewish community. That's a very good thing. But I think once he's done that, he should not just subject new cases of anti-Semitism, new allegations to that, but he should rerun all the ones that were brushed under the carpet under Jeremy Corbyn. I think every candidate for elected office or for the National Executive Committee of the Labour Party, which runs the party, should have to sign up to the IRA definition of anti-Semitism. I think that I think there's got to be a new, sort of a new approach to Israel, where they've got to stop the demonization of Israel, subjecting it to double standards, comparing Israel's behavior to the crimes of the Nazis, denying Jewish people the right to self-determination. They've got to end this obsession with Israel. I think these are the sorts of things that we want to see the Labour Party do under Keir Starmer. And it'd be those sorts of tests, those sorts of actions that'll determine whether he's managed to drag the party back to the mainstream and tackle the extremism and anti-Semitism that has poisoned it under the hard left.
I mean, the new Middle East spokesperson for the Labour Party is a man called Wayne David. And to answer David's question very directly, in the battles in the early 1980s that some of us had on anti-Semitism when it was less fashionable to be tackling anti-Semitism on the left, and very few people were. And Wayne David was there alongside me, and he was on the right side of the arguments at that stage. Well, that's 40 years ago. And so instinctively, we have someone who understands the issue. What the test that I would give for the Labour Party is a very, very simple one. It's one I have given them, which is to make the use of the word Zionist as a term of insult or abuse illegitimate, incompatible with activity within the Labour Party. And I would like to see government looking at how we can make it incompatible with any decent, genuine political involvement by anybody. In other words, someone who wishes to define themselves as a Zionist should be free to do so wherever they are.
I think it's in all our interests that Keir Starmer succeeds, because in the UK we have a two-party state, pretty much same as the US, and it doesn't seem to me that that's going to change anytime soon. And I'm not a conservative, and I'm not a supporter of Boris Johnson. I'm not now in any party. I have no political home. My political home is the Labour Party. And I think it's really, really serious if one of the two main political parties in our country, one of which for the foreseeable future will always form the government, if one of those parties is anti-Israel and anti-Zionist and therefore anti-Semitic, then I think that is a most serious situation. It's a fatal situation. And that's what we were fighting against. And that's why we had to make sure that Jeremy Corbyn couldn't become Prime Minister. And not only that, that if he didn't win an election, that we'd reveal their politics to such a degree that you couldn't have what was called a continuity Corbyn candidate, to peel their fingers off the leadership, because we know how important leadership is. And I think Keir Starmer has an opportunity to make a very significant change to the Labour Party. And there are a lot of people in the Labour Party who want to see that happen. But leadership is the thing that matters most. So he has got to make some very tough decisions, and he will be judged by his actions, and it will be difficult. But I think if he stands up and really does what he said he wants to do, and I've no reason to doubt that he wants to do that and make a success of his leadership and take the Labour Party back to its fundamental values and principles, but forward into good and decent policies. If he does that, I think he will grow the support for his leadership within the party. And that will make life harder all the time for the hard left and for the extremists. So it's down to him in many ways. Leadership is very important. Politics is a team a sport, so to speak. You can't do anything without a team. They say of a leader without followers is just a man going for a walk. Well, I don't think Keir Starmer wants to be just a man going for a walk. And if people like me who left the Labour Party and like Ian say we want to see him succeed, but it can't be on the basis of covering up the problem or a false unity. It really has got to be tearing out anti-Semitism by its roots. If we're saying that, then there'll be many others who want to see him succeed. So it's over to him. I think the support is there for him and the desire for change to rescue the Labour Party from this disaster, this catastrophe that's befell it. And it's a catastrophe for the Jewish community and for the whole of the British people who need a good, decent Labour government who understands their needs. So there's a lot on his shoulders, but there's a lot of people want to see this happen. If he gives that leadership, then people will follow, I believe. I think the evidence of that is the election result we've seen, the rejection of what Corbyn stood for. So it's down to him now. And I think it does give hope, but there's nothing worse than hope coming out of this terrible adversity and then that hope being dashed. So I think our plea has to be to him, please don't dash this hope. Please deliver.
Thank you very much, Joan. Thank you to the three of you on this last message of hope. It was once again a privilege to be speaking with you today, as always, to be calling you friends of AJC. Ali, to you.
Thank you for that fascinating discussion, and to three longtime friends of AJC. We hope that each of you stays healthy and well. Thanks as well to our audience for joining us today, and to our partners at Jewish Insider. Moadim Lim Simcha, happy Passover. Please stay safe and healthy, everyone.